Thank you for your continued support and interest in Reality Bleeding. Chapter 10. The scent of decaying leaves filled Lathanda's senses. She stood atop the ruined archway overlooking the fallen township of Raven's Reach. The air was thick, mist tendrils of fog weaving through the shattered remnants of once proud homes. Shadows danced beneath the skeletal branches of dead trees, their clawed limbs reaching toward a starless sky. She felt the weight of her bow in her hands. The polished wood was smooth against her fingertips. The string hummed with latent energy, a taut line between anticipation and release. Below her, comrades moved with purpose, the soft glow of enchantments casting halos around their figures. "Positions," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath yet carried to each ear by magic. The team responded with silent efficiency, 10 souls bound by fate and friendship diving headlong into the abyss. Their footsteps echoed against cobblestone streets, a staccato rhythm of courage and resolve. Skeletons emerged from the gloom, eyes ablaze with unholy fire. They swarmed like locusts, the clatter of bones, a discordant symphony. Lathanda drew an arrow, the fletching brushing her cheek as she took aim. "Engage!" she commanded, the words slicing through the din. Her arrow flew true, piercing the skull of the nearest undead. It collapsed in a heap, bones scattering like fallen leaves. Around her the battle unfolded, a tapestry of steel and sorcery. "Kurgrim, hold the center!" she called out. "Aye!" Kurgrim Bloodaxe bellowed, his massive shield gleaming as he waded into the fray. Beside him, Cardril the barbarian let out a primal roar, axes whirling in deadly arcs. Lathanda didn't know him well, an acquaintance at best, but he held his ground. "Not bad for an off-tank," she mused. They'd reached level 60, and 10-man dungeon raids were the new standard. The guild was adapting, though some adjustments were smoother than others. Some fights demanded 2 good tanks, and while Kurgrim was solid, the backups were still finding their footing. "Arcanus, take your fire team left. Cut off their flank," she ordered, her magically assisted voice once again above the unfolding mayhem. "On it," Arcanus replied, his robes billowing as he led a group of ranged DPS. Sari darted through the melee, her daggers flashing like quicksilver. "If one more skeleton looks at me funny, I'm starting a bone collection for a new guildmaster's chair," she quipped between strikes. "Focus, Sari," Lathanda admonished, gently a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Always am," Sari winked, smashing a flaming magical blade through a skeleton's ribs like a sledgehammer. The courtyard battle was dual-phased. First, a relentless onslaught designed to test their coordination. Lathanda's eyes flickered over the battlefield. She barked out some more commands. People moved around for her like chess pieces on a board. They were ready for this. Proper planning prevents piss-poor performance, she thought to herself, the capitals of each word vivid in her mind. She'd planned this dungeon raid out for hours, consulting every written article and watching vid after vid. "Phase 2 incoming," she warned. From the shadows, 4 massive undead spiders skittered into view, their legs clicking ominously against stone. Venom dripped from their fangs, pooling in hissing acidic puddles. "Kurgrim, Cardril, you know the drill." The tanks nodded, moving to intercept. "Let's dance," Cardril growled. Lathanda was impressed. She liked his attitude, and to see some roleplay in the middle of such a tense fight. "Maintain distance between them," Lathanda reminded. "Their poisons stack, but are individually applied." "Got it," Kurgrim affirmed, bracing himself as a spider lunged. His shield warrior abilities made him a superlative tank, and his shield counter-striked hard, smashing sticky gore from the creature. The rest of the party fell into formation. Lathanda had drilled them on the small unit tactics needed for the fight on an open field in front of the dungeon. Breaking the group into fire teams for flexibility was turning into an inspired idea of hers. It had taken time, and some had questioned, but they all saw the benefits now in her approach. "Switch in 30 seconds, she called. Arcanus's team unleashed a barrage of spells, arcane missiles streaking through the air. "DPS group, burn them down," he shouted. Lithanda winced. Despite all his progression in role-playing, he occasionally still slipped. She'd have a quiet word afterwards. He needed to set a better example as a class leader now. Sari moved with liquid grace, targeting weak points, her shadow teleport ability giving her unmatched movement as she struck again and again. "These things are uglier up close," she remarked. "Stay sharp," Lithanda cautioned, loosing another arrow. She loved Sari's quips, but she was tense. "Switch now," she commanded. Kurgrim and Cardrill swapped positions seamlessly, allowing toxins from particular spiders to dissipate. With each spider's poison being individually applied, each stack was effectively starting anew on them. Their former spider opponents' poison stacks would now fall off, and the new adversaries' poison stacks would have to start all over again, building from zero. It was a key boss fight-specific maneuver they'd practiced with her outside the dungeon to overcome the deadly stacking poison mechanic. Drilled, to be fair. A necessity in this permadeath realm, thought Lithanda. No room for error. "Perfect execution," Lithanda shouted at them, a surge of pride warming her. Her guild was really doing it. They were listening. The practice had paid off. "Arcanus, focus fire on the northmost spider," she directed, "but don't drop him into execute range yet." It was critical none of the 4 undead spiders died prematurely. They had to be all dropped as a group within 10 seconds of each other. Get it wrong, and a brutal berserk buff was applied to the remaining spiders, which would start one-shotting the tanks. "Consider it squashed," Arcanus replied, casting a torrent of flame, his group moving as one to lock onto his target. The spider screeched, its exoskeleton cracking under the assault. "Gather," Lithanda ordered. The tanks herded the 4 undead spiders into a tight cluster. The fight end phase was deadly. Lithanda knew this was the second major coordination hurdle. The mob's damage was about to spike as they all hit low health levels. Not a berserk phase, which would kill them, but definitely a time for the tanks and their healers to start using all their long cooldowns. AOE now! Lithanda hated using the game term, but sometimes even on an RP server you needed to be straightforward. A maelstrom of fire, ice, and shadow engulfed the 4 enemies. Explosions rocked the courtyard as the spiders collapsed, limbs twitching before falling still. Silence hung for a heartbeat. "Yes!" Sari exclaimed, punching the air. "Well-executed team," Lithanda said, allowing herself a rare smile. The spiders' bodies even revealed good progression loot for them. Some definite upgrades there for some people, she thought. Lithanda walked up to everyone in the team, giving individual praise. Build team spirit and confidence, she thought. When they followed orders on the battlefield, they'd get rewarded for it. It was key to build trust in her command ability. "That's what I'm talking about," Kurgrim laughed, clapping Cardrill on the back. They'd done it. Raven's Reach's first major hurdle cleared, a significant milestone in any guild's journey on Gates of Baraadon. Sari stepped forward, her eyes bright. "Listen up, everyone," she began. "Full wipes at this stage can be catastrophic. We've all heard stories, guilds falling apart after losing their top players here. The Guild Killer, they are calling it." Arcanus nodded solemnly. "Remember Crimson Blade? Raven's Reach broke them." Lithanda surveyed her friends. "We've come a long way from being called a Care Bear guild," she remarked. "Who's calling us that?" Kurgrim asked indignantly. "Doesn't matter," Sari interjected. "What matters is we're proving them wrong." "Agreed," Arcanus said. "Our coordination was spot on." "The fire team concept is really paying off," another member chimed in. "Thanks to Lithanda's leadership," Sari smiled, shooting her a grateful look. "Just doing my part," Lithanda replied modestly. The acknowledgement warmed her. She loved Ciri to bits on a personal level, but she was also her CO as guildmaster, so the praise mattered when it came from that source more. "All right, let's take 5, Kurgrim suggested. "Rest up before we push deeper." As the group settled, snippets of non-RP conversation floated through the air. This wasn't campfiring time. This was a de-stress after an intense fight. Even Lithanda couldn't bring herself to correct them. "Did anyone else update their gear stats after the last patch?" someone asked. "Yeah, had to rework my entire build," another groaned. It was true, Lithanda thought. The last patch that had dropped had pushed her to have to reassess her build too. Still a Shadow Ranger, but now focused on applying dots rather than just direct damage. Ciri plopped down beside Lithanda. "So, thinking about the next boss?" "Always," Lithanda lied, brushing aside thoughts of build maps, DPS sims, and talent tree calculators. "It's a step up from this one." "Can't wait," Ciri grinned. "Your calls were so on point." Making time to seek her out for individual praise, Lithanda mused. That's what made her a great guild leader. She innately knew good leadership. Good commander. No training needed. "Couldn't have done it without everyone's trust," Lithanda acknowledged. The words, "forever loyal," crossed her stream of thought. That trust was something that was earned. Dedication and loyalty returned back to the guild as a group. "Trust, and a little bit of fear," Ciri teased. "You can be intimidating. I've never seen you this intense before. You coached those 2 tanks like a drill sergeant." "Only when necessary," Lithanda smirked. Was she being overbearing? Arcanus approached, munching on a virtual apple. "So, after we clear Raven's Reach, what's next?" "That's for tomorrow," Lithanda said firmly. They needed the platoon to refocus on the task at hand quickly. Stay in the moment. One step at a time. The break ended, and they prepared to move forward. Equipment checked, spells ready, minds focused. Lithanda made a few moments to talk with her fire team leaders individually to ensure they were fully back to it. "All right, team." Lithanda's voice carried authority and confidence. "Let's show Raven's Reach who we are." As they formed up, and as they ventured deeper into the shadows, Lithanda couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. They'd passed a critical test, not just of game avatar power, but of unity, teamwork, and coordination. A stream of Mandarin passed through her consciousness. "I'm truly proud of these guys," she thought. "Onward," she shouted to them, gripping her bow tightly. "The path ahead is fraught with danger, but together we are unstoppable." So much for just being a Care Bear guild, Lithanda thought. Transition. The scent of damp stone and ancient decay clung to the air. A miasma that seeped into Lithanda's very bones. The deeper they ventured into the walled city, the more the shadows seemed to whisper secrets. Promises of glory entwined with threats of oblivion. She ran her fingers along the feathered shaft of an arrow, the texture grounding her amid the ethereal glow of ghostly apparitions they'd left in their wake. Her comrades moved with a practiced grace. The quiet shuffle of boots on cobblestone, the only sound aside from the distant echo of dripping water. The eerie luminescence of ghoul fire cast flickering patterns on the crumbling walls, revealing faded murals of a time long past. Lithanda could almost taste the history here, a bittersweet tang of triumph and tragedy. They had dispatched the last of the guardians, spectral knights whose hollow eyes betrayed a sorrow deeper than death. Now the final barrier stood before them, the lair of the Duke of Death, the shadow-corrupted Elf-Lord Highglade. His presence was a palpable weight pressing against the edges of their consciousness like a storm about to break. "All right, team," Cherry began, her voice steady, but tinged with excitement. "This is it. We've got our strategies down. Let's make this count." Piope shifted uncomfortably, his usual polite demeanor replaced with a hint of apprehension. Guys? Small problem?" Lathanda turned, the subtle movement causing her cloak to ripple like liquid night. "What is it?" she asked, her tone crisp. "I've, run out of cooldown reagents for my big AoE healing cooldown," Piope admitted sheepishly. "I need to fast travel back to the nearest vendor. It'll only take 15 minutes. A cold surge of irritation flashed through her. "You what?" The words came out sharper than intended. "I'm really sorry," he stammered. "I thought I had enough, but—" "Unbelievable!" Lathanda snapped, her eyes narrowing. "Do you realize you're letting down the entire platoon? We can't afford delays because someone didn't plan ahead." The group fell silent, the ambient sounds of the dungeon suddenly amplified in the void left by their stunned voices. "Lathanda," Arcanus interjected cautiously. "It's not that big of a deal. We can wait." She whirled on him, a mix of frustration and something darker flickering across her face. "In this fighting force, everyone is expected to take responsibility, to play their part. We can't succeed if people are this careless." Piope's expression crumbled, guilt etched into every line. "I'll be quick," he mumbled. Initiating the fast travel sequence, his form dissolving into particles of light. An uncomfortable tension hung in the air. Sari stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Lathanda's arm. "Hey, can we talk for a sec?" Lathanda exhaled sharply, but nodded. "Fine." Sari guided her away from the group, stopping beneath an archway draped in creeping vines that seemed to pulse with a faint, otherworldly energy. "Look," she began, her usual bright eyes clouded with concern. "We're all keyed up, but we can't talk to guildmates like that." Lathanda crossed her arms defensively. He was unprepared. That's unacceptable at this stage. She had stopped herself adding "sir" to that sentence with palpable effort. She internally cursed at her LearnSoft mod for a moment. She was beginning to grasp its impact on the situation. "We're human," Sari insisted softly. "We make mistakes. We're not the kind of guild that shouts in people's faces. That's just not us." A muscle in Lathanda's jaw tightened. The words resonated uncomfortably, echoing against the knowledge of what had probably led her to act out. She faltered, searching for the right response, struggling to even grasp how to explain. Sari tilted her head, studying her intently. "This just isn't like you, Lathanda. What's really going on?" Silence stretched between them, thick as the shadows enveloping the dungeon. Finally, Lathanda sank to her knees, so their eyes were level, the weight of unspoken burdens pressing down. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "So much is wrong." Sari's gaze softened. "Talk to me." "I have this new piece of cyberware," Lathanda confessed, her words tumbling out in a rush. "It's glitching. My life's falling apart. I can't control it." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry." Before she could say more, Sari wrapped her arms around her, holding her tightly. The warmth of the embrace was a balm against the cold despair gnawing at her. For a moment, Lathanda allowed herself to lean into it to draw strength from the simple act of connection. "I'm here for you," Sari murmured. "I may not be able to fix what's happening IRL, but you're not alone." Lathanda pulled back, slightly meeting her friend's eyes. "I just really needed this win," she admitted. "Something positive and solid to hold on to." "I understand," Sari said gently. "But as guildmaster, I have to say, you can't speak to our guildmates like that. It's not fair, and it's not who we are." A pang of guilt twisted in Lathanda's chest. "You're right. I crossed a line." Sari offered a small smile. "Take a couple of days off from the high-stakes stuff after this. Focus on what you love about the game. Be the sensationalist for a while, not the raid leader. We'll do it together, haunt the bars of the towns, sniff the forest air. Everything I know you really love about this place. No more skeletons, no more leadership, just me and you. Lathanna nodded slowly. You've really grown into this role, you know. Someone had to, Sari teased lightly, her eyes regaining their usual sparkle. They made their way back to the group. Piope had returned, his demeanor cautious as he avoided meeting Lathanna's gaze. Before anyone could speak, Lathanna stepped forward. Everyone, I need a moment. The team turned their attention to her, a mix of curiosity and lingering tension evident. She took a steadying breath. Piope, I'm sorry. The way I spoke to you was unacceptable. I let my stress and tension out on you, and that's not fair to you or anyone here. The way I acted, that's not us. That's not the fellowship. He looked up, surprise evident. It's okay, he replied hesitantly. I should have been prepared. No, she insisted. We win as a guild, and we uphold certain values: respect, support, understanding. I failed to embody those, and for that I apologize to all of you. Kurgrim Bloodaxe strode forward, his heavy armor clinking softly. Without warning, he enveloped Lathanna in a bear hug. You're hard on yourself, lass, he rumbled. We're a team, and that means we carry each other's burdens. She managed a small laugh. Careful, Kurgrim, you're going to crush me. He released her with a chuckle. Can't have that. We need you sharp for the Duke. Arcanus nodded thoughtfully. First time tackling a dungeon of this caliber is tough. We're all feeling the pressure. Piope stepped closer. I was upset. Yeah, I'd screwed up, and you shouting wasn't helping, but I get it. No hard feelings? None, Lathanna assured him, relief washing over her. She honestly hoped that was the end of it. Group hug, Sari declared, pulling them all into a haphazard embrace. Is this mandatory? Cardrell grumbled, though a faint smile betrayed his amusement. Absolutely, Sari retorted, the raid group all dogpiled on top. Laughter rippled through the team, dispelling the remnants of tension. All right, Arcanus clapped his hands together. Shall we go defeat an undead, corrupted elf lord? Let's do it, Lathanna agreed, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. As they reorganized, Lathanna couldn't help but internally curse at how her implant had disrupted her online sanctuary. Her friends, this game. It was supposed to be her escape, not a battlefield fraught with complications. Ready when you are, Sari said, giving her an encouraging nod. Form up, Lathanna instructed, her voice steady. Same strategy as we discussed earlier. Remember, communication is key. They advanced toward the ominous gates of the lair, the air growing colder with each step. The darkness ahead seemed to pulse alive with malevolent intent. They crossed the threshold, the oppressive energy of Lord Highlade's domain pressing in. Shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, and a low, chilling laugh echoed from the depths. Welcome, trespassers, a voice dripped with malice. Prepare to join my legion of the damned. Cheery fellow, Sari muttered. Focus, Lathanna chided her softly. The last challenge awaits, she shouted to the raid team, tightening her grip on her bow. And together we're ready. Transition. The forest embraced Lathanna with a tapestry of sensations. The dappled sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting golden patterns on the moss-covered ground. The air was alive with the scent of wildflowers, the distant trill of songbirds. Leaves whispered secrets as a gentle breeze stirred them. The earthy aroma of damp soil grounded her. Sari had outdone herself again. A lavish picnic sprawled before them on a checkered cloth, honeyed breads, ripe fruits glistening with dew, cheeses infused with herbs, and flagons of sweet mead. It was a feast fit for a raid group. Yet today, it was just the two of them, From the corner of her eye, Lithanda noticed Sari watching her intently, concern shadowing her usually bright gaze. But Sari remained silent, allowing Lithanda the space to absorb the moment. Drawn by the melodic babble of a nearby stream, Lithanda wandered over, her footsteps barely disturbing the carpet of leaves. Kneeling by the water's edge, she dipped her hands into the cool flow. The sensation was invigorating, the crystal-clear water swirling around her fingers like liquid silk. She closed her eyes, letting the sound and touch envelop her, a respite from the turmoil churning within. Her ranger's sanctuary enveloped them in an invisible barrier, ensuring no wandering creatures would disturb their peace. But just as she began to lose herself in the tranquility, a mischievous giggle broke through. Before she could react, a playful shove sent her tumbling into the stream. The shock of cold water elicited a gasp, replaced quickly by laughter as she surfaced, droplets sparkling like diamonds in her hair. "You looked like you needed that!" Sari grinned, her eyes dancing with mischief. Lithanda shook her head, chuckling. "I did. I really did." She waded back to the bank, her clothes drying instantly with a whispered incantation. Settling onto the soft grass, she reached for a tall glass filled with elven wine, the liquid catching the light in hues of amber and rose. "I'm going to step down as raid leader," she said quietly, swirling the wine in her glass. "For a while at least." Sari arched an eyebrow, but remained silent, her expression encouraging, yet unobtrusive. "Kurgrim knows the strategies as well as I do," Lithanda continued. "He leads with confidence, and the team respects him." Without a word, Sari tossed her a small cake, its icing adorned with delicate flowers. Lithanda caught it effortlessly, taking a bite and savoring the burst of sweet berries. They sat in companionable silence, the gentle sounds of the forest wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Finally, Sari broke the quiet. "You had me worried during the raid," she admitted softly. "You didn't seem like yourself. For a moment I thought maybe you'd let someone else pilot your account." Lithanda grimaced. "No, it was me. Just dealing with some major real-life issues. Serious stuff." She hesitated. "I don't want to unload it all on you." Sari reached out, her fingers brushing lightly against Lithanda's hand. "You don't have to share anything you're not comfortable with," she said gently. "But I want you to know I'm here for you, not just as a game friend." Her gaze held a depth that made Lithanda's heart skip. "I've been hoping that maybe we're more than just friends," Sari continued, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. Lithanda felt a mix of emotions swirl within her. Peril's brutal honesty echoed in her mind, urging transparency. She searched for the right words. "We've been growing closer," she acknowledged, "but we haven't really talked about what that means." Sari nodded slowly. "I guess we've both avoided labeling it," she admitted. She took Lithanda's hand firmly, the warmth of her touch reassuring. "But regardless of labels, I care about you." "It's important to me that we're authentic with each other," Lithanda said carefully, "to be clear about boundaries and honest about who we are." A flicker of uncertainty passed over Sari's face, surprising Lithanda. "I don't need to know everything," Sari replied, her tone measured. "I have no intention of connecting in real life. I'm content with what we have here." Lithanda tilted her head, processing the sudden, unexpected shift. "You don't want to know about my life outside the game? How could you be truthful and transparent with someone who actively didn't want to know?" Sari shook her head gently. "The real world is messy, complicated. Here we can be who we want to be, free from all that. I want to support you, but I also want to keep this, us, separate from everything else." She leaned in slightly, her voice softening. "Whoever you are out there, whatever challenges you're facing, it doesn't change who you are to me. You're my Latanda." She started to grin. The noble elf ranger who occasionally goes overboard when given the slightest whiff of responsibility and power. A smile tugged at Lathanda's lips. Guilty as charged. Ceri's eyes searched hers. "I just don't want to lose this. Don't hurt me by bringing in things that could complicate what we have. I don't want this to end." Lathanda felt a pang of conflict. The "don't hurt me" was stark and clear in Ceri's voice. It even had a pleading quality. She had been prepared to share more, to bridge the gap between her virtual self and reality. But Ceri's reluctance was clear, her desire to keep their connection within the boundaries of the game palpable. She inhaled deeply, the scent of pine and wildflowers filling her lungs. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the gentle rustling of leaves the only sound besides the murmuring stream. "All right," Lathanda said softly. "I respect that." She would tell Peril all about this chat, though. Ceri didn't seem to want to have real transparency in this relationship, but genuineness and openness was the beating heart of what she had outside the game. Ceri visibly relaxed, a smile spreading across her face. "Thank you." They sat together, the sunlight casting dappled patterns around them. Lathanda let the moment breathe, the serenity of the forest seeping into her. "Tell me more about your plans," Ceri prompted, her tone lightening, shifting the conversation completely. "If you're stepping back from raid leading, what will you focus on?" "Maybe I'll explore some of the uncharted regions and areas," Lathanda mused. "Rediscover why I fell in love with this world in the first place. Try and find places that are as meaningful as this one." "That sounds wonderful," Ceri agreed. "And who knows? Maybe I'll join you on some of those adventures." "I'd like that," Lathanda replied, a genuine smile warming her features. Ceri nudged her playfully. "Just promise you won't disappear on me." There was an undercurrent there, Lathanda realized. She was worried Lathanda would ghost completely and leave the game. No, she'd already ghosted from her real life. She wasn't about to do it again online. "I wouldn't dream of it." Transition. End of chapter. Thank you for your continued interest in Reality Bleeding, and please do let me know in the comments below your thoughts. Thanks for listening.